The world is constantly telling us to live our authentic self, but we can get confused about what that is and where to even find that.
We're all struggling to figure out, what's authentic? What is even real?
What is even real?
There are so many fakes that are out there, but now we're really in a position where we're really trying to fool each other.
But since everyone's doing it, it seems normal. So how do you know that's real because everyone else is doing it? Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things I think is huge in finding authentic purpose.
There's things when we're looking for what is real or what's the right thing to do. There are people out there now that they might not literally have any unique skill set. They have a funny way they dance, or they have a funny thing that they've said, and now they'll have millions of followers. And the way we even talk about them is we'll call them influencers, because they're the ones that are saying, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Look at all eyes are on me. So if you want what I have, if you want the best of life, if you want the best of these things or this moment for you, then imitate me." And it's interesting. It's different than how the Bible would say, or Paul might say, imitate me while I imitate Christ. We have influencers today that are saying, if you want to be a part of what's real or want influence or want to be on the winning side of life right now, your best bet is to do what I'm doing. And I think people are falling for that every day. They're swiping for it. They're double hearting that. Double tapping hearting that thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's difficult.
Well, and I think also you need to define what is authentic, right? So the world might say it's just you living your own true self, right? Finding your own identity. Maybe you find that in your feelings or in your peers.
It makes me think of a show that I used to love called Pawn Stars. And the whole thing was they're bringing in these items and they think they have value. And they're trying to figure out, is this real or is this a fake? And a lot of times they'll end up having to bring in experts. Mm-hmm. And all of these things that they're looking at, they have these authenticating markers about them that if you look at a certain way, or this was the original was stitched on and this is glued on, this is clearly a fake. But the reason that any of those things ever existed was because they did have a purpose. Yeah. And so I think when you're looking at something that's authentic, I think you find it that when it lives up to the purpose that it was intended for, then that's the real thing. That's the real use of it. And so for us, as we're trying to figure out, I think, authentic purpose or in our own lives, it's this idea of we're all here for a reason. What is that reason? The most authentic thing I could do is be used in the way that I was intended.
Mm-hmm. So then, we're constantly, maybe we're going to our peers or just our feelings, or we're going to social media. How would you say we can actually find our authentic purpose?
Yeah, I'll answer. So I think there's a series of, it's not just a broad thing, how do you find this authentic purpose? I think there's a series of steps. And I think today we like to skip steps as thinking we're going to be able to just get to that point. Like what you're saying with the influencers, but they got this. So if I do this is what's going to happen. Paul tells us in Colossians we must die to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have to die to our old selves first. And in order to find those, your authentic purpose, I think you have to have the thoughts of God. But for me, for instance, I wanted to get a new phone. I wanted to get iPhone 15 because I needed it to get iOS 18. And the problem was on my laptop, I couldn't do the screen mirroring because it wasn't compatible with this phone. And I still need to get a new phone. But the problem is that phone couldn't be compatible. iOS 18 was not compatible with this phone. So that's the same thing with us. Our body is hardware. In order to be able to have the thoughts of Christ, we have to be able to die to our old body. So I think that's one of the essential steps that needs to take place with defining authenticity within ourselves.
So you're saying we have to update our system so that it aligns with Christ, right?
Yeah, I'm saying
our operating system.
Yes, that's the analogy. Yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
Just thinking of Jeremiah, I was looking at, the heart is deceitful above all. So, yeah, it's so hard to go, all right, well, I need to get a new software, I guess, in there or something. I have to update in such a way so that I can even understand what my purpose is intended to be and what it's for. And yet my very heart is deceitful in all things. And so how do we go about finding whatever these authenticating markers are that help us go, all right, this is the way, walk in it. This is what you were intended for. So now have at it. The path is wide open for you to now pursue this thing. Well, how do we go about finding that? Where do we look for? What do we look to?
I think the Bible. When you're talking about Pawn Stars, but you have people who give out counterfeit money, right?
Yeah.
And if you were to get counterfeit money, how do you know that it's real? You know what real money looks like in the first place. You've already memorized the money so that you know what is real.
And it's real, or you understand where the fakes are by basically just the time that you spend with the real thing.
Yeah.
And when I'm starting to think about my own life or thinking about my future or my children and their future, it's not that I have to go out into the world and test all of these things. Yeah. It's actually that if I know the mind of Christ, if I'm studying his word, that alone will help me understand what's authentic.
Right.
It's not as I get into understanding, the deep fakes of our society, or the deep fakes of the world, and understand that these are the things that are counterfeit.
Yeah.
But if I'm really about my purpose, my future, then I have to spend time with my God and know his plans for me.
Right.
And if I get that right and I spend my time there, I really won't have to worry then. I won't be duped in the way that a lot of society is thinking about, where is joy come from? Where is happiness come from? Where's purpose come from? I'll be right in the center of it.
And I think that in order to know what our authentic purpose is and how we are meant to be, and testing whether or not what we're doing is right and real, we have to know the word, and we have to know it better than other people who come at us and tell us, oh, this is what it says. Well, actually, I hear what you're saying, but that's not what Scripture is saying, and here is what it is. And I think one of those ways, and one great example is David. And I think that we see him constantly showing us his real and authentic purpose, and how God showing it through Scripture.
Do you think David knew, like, he was a shepherd, he was obedient, like those little things? Do you think he knew his kingship was going to just automatically, like, do you think in his thought process he was going to be where he was at? Do you think did he know that was going to be his authentic purpose?
See, and that's the beauty of David, who's such a great example of this. I don't think he was looking to be king. I don't think, when you look at David and you understand his story and his life, and there his dad is, the prophet comes looking for the king, and he lines up all his boys, but he doesn't go get David. David's not a part of it. And when you actually think, well, what were they falling for? I mean, they had already had a king. They had King Saul, and the people were crying, hey, give us a king. We want a king. We want to be like everyone else. All these other kingdoms have a king. We don't have a king. All we have is God, but we kind of need a king. God goes, all right, you want me to give you a king. I'll give you one that looks like you think it should look. You want big guy? You want big old tough, strong guy? Is that what you want? Big 6 footer? You want a big guy? And all of a sudden, so they got Saul. And when they anointed Saul, the prophet was like, now that guy, he looks like a king.
Yeah, but he's over hiding in the baggage, Yeah.
Right? And what looked to be authentic and what looked to be real became disastrous for the people of God. And so now enter in David, right? And you look at Jesse going, oh, I think I know where this is going. Let me help sort out all my sons for you, because one of these hopefully looks like a king. But through the lens of David, and even through the lens of Jesse, I don't think they looked at themselves and said, "Oh, this is the one that's a king." It's only when you look through the lens of the Father, because he looks at different things, right? He says, "I don't look on the outside like man looks on the outside. I'm looking at the heart. I'm looking at something different." And so that enters the stage for a young shepherd who just loved to serve, who was happy and content, loved the Lord. And I think as we kind of get into David's journey, we're going to start to find out, all right, how do you go from the least of these, the last of these, unthought of in service, and end up from shepherd to a king? I think there's some things that we can look at and discover in his life that will point us in the right direction, that maybe we can pull for our own lives and for those that might benefit from this as well.
Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, and I think that like what you said through the lens and the things we can benefit through looking at David's story, I think like even the fact of him being a shepherd, like it's just super underrated as especially my generation. I like going back to my generation because we kind of fall in the foolishness of not being obedient. Through our obedience, David, what is not, like it's very underestimated, and he woke up every single day in the dead morning to do what he was called to do, what he thought he was called to do, to be a shepherd. And I think one of those little small things that plays a huge factor in his role to being kingship was his obedience of doing his everyday craft and doing it to the best of his ability. And God saw that, and like you said, through the lens of the others, they're looking at this guy like, I don't think this ain't. I mean, this isn't the king. But God ain't looking at that. He's looking at the inward of man and how your character. What makes you a king is through your character, and I think that was really prevalent through that.
You know, you speaking that way makes me think of the scripture that talks about if you're faithful in the little things, right? Being faithful in the little things, then you are trusted with much, and you hit that where David. Ultimately, that's what he was. He was very faithful in the little things. He wasn't trying to figure out how to go lord over or influence others. He just wanted to. I think he just wanted to serve, and he certainly, as we'll find out and discover, and we know in his life, loved God. But there was never a job that he was too big for. There was never something that he had grown out of when it came to however he could serve his family or serve the Lord, as we'll eventually kind of discover. So I'm excited as we move forward in our conversation with this idea of authenticity, with authentic purpose, and especially in the life of David. I think there's a lot of things that we're going to get to unpack in his life. But when it comes to authentic purpose, I think we're going to find 4 different pillars of purpose that help David go from faithful shepherd boy to a faithful king. Those 4 pillars aren't just for David; they're for all of us. And when we start to unpack these, I think you'll find there's some of this that shows up in my own life. I've seen this show up in the life of other people. That these are those authenticating markers, if you will. How do I know that my purpose or the thing that I'm pursuing is the real thing? We're going to find it in the life of David. I think we'll find it in our own lives through service, experience, academics, and leadership. It is the authenticating seal of our life. And I think we'll find it in his life. I think we'll discover it hopefully in our own. And we'll start to press further into these 4 pillars. I think we'll be well on our way to our authentic purpose.